like to walk all the way around. This is great. Hello. Wow, look at all these people. My name is Leslie Miley, and thank you for coming today. My name is Leslie Miley. Can you hear me now? If you can't hear me, let me know. No? Oh, hi, look at this, people I know. I don't know if I can yell any louder, but if this is not good enough, then tell the guys back there they will be able to turn up the gain on my microphone. Once again, thank you for coming. I am happy to be here. It's a beautiful day in San Francisco, beautiful summer day in San Francisco, as we like to say in October. I've been thinking a lot about the last year, and it's been crazy. And maybe I'll go back a little further than that. 2 years ago, I wrote a piece on Model View Culture, Shanley Kane's site, talking about diversity in tech and how I was not very confident that it was ever going to get solved. And one of the points I took was that I'm not here to help you solve a problem you created. Oh, that's great. I like that. But then a year after that, I came out as black on Twitter and wrote a piece on Twitter or on Medium that was my experience at Twitter. And I started to really think about what would solve the problem, or at least start to solve the problem. And over the last year, I think we've all seen a lot of the same, which is tech companies partnering with other firms, doing unconscious bias or bias training, all of these different things, if you want to call them that. And yet, year after year, they keep reporting the same thing, which is, we saw some improvement, but not much, and we're going to do this again next year and say the same thing again, and again. And somebody wrote about how if that were any other product in tech, it would be killed by now because it was totally unsuccessful. You don't do this year after year, have virtually no improvement, and then keep doing it and keep expecting people to buy into it. And I think that's one of the reasons you see a lot of the companies taking a little bit longer to do their reports, because I think their hearts are in the right place, but I don't think their money is in the right place. And that's what I'm talking about now. So what happens when you invest in communities? It's a little bit interesting. Google has now opened a huge office in Boulder, Colorado. If anyone has taken a look at the diversity in Boulder, Colorado, no diversity. I saw a great chart, though, that it's like, white, 87%. African American, there was nothing on the bar. It was just nothing. And I know 2 black people in Boulder. So that may be the only black people in Boulder. Apple opens a huge development office in Hyderabad. I think it's a $25 million office. How do you spend $25 million in India for an office? I mean, that's an office here. And so it's huge. It's 4,000 people. 4,000 people. Facebook doing the same thing. They want to leverage a brand in India. They want to reach out to business and engage with local communities. I think this is great, though, because these are global companies, and they have to be on the global stage. But this is what happens when you invest in those communities. You have 27% Asian at Apple, 46% at Facebook, 37% at Google. They invested in these communities, and this is what they came up with. This should be a surprise to anyone. We should all expect this. When you put this much time, effort, and money into these communities, this is what your workforce is going to look like. And I don't think that's a problem necessarily. But what happens when you don't invest in diverse communities? I did this search this morning. I said, what about Atlanta? Great city, great diverse city. 0 software engineering jobs for Google. 0 software engineering jobs for Facebook. 0 software engineering jobs for Apple. How about investing in the community? I'm an engineer. I've been an engineer for most of my career, and I want to see engineering jobs in these communities because they are so empowering, because they are so well-paying, because there are few of us people of color, women in engineering, and we serve as an example. We serve as inspiration. But when you don't invest in communities, that are diverse, communities that have, diversity, communities of color, you're not going to have employees of color. You're not going to have people of color in your workplace. It just makes it that much more difficult to change the ratio. So this is what happens when you don't. So Facebook's pipeline excuse this last year, which I found personally insulting, and I am grinding an axe on this one, because for any company to say that one of the reasons is because Mississippi is doing poorly, that's why we're doing poorly, I was kind of out of my mind. Mississippi is bad in everything good and good in everything bad from a demographic standpoint. And for Facebook to hang its hat on, Mississippi didn't have any people of color who took the advanced placement test. I'm like, really? That's the best you can do? Google's efforts still have a long way to go. Google is spending time, effort, and a lot of money, and their numbers are also not changing. And Apple had a Canadian on stage for their iPhone 7 event. And that Canadian wasn't Drake. So this is what happens when you don't invest in these communities. And it's baffling to me as an engineer and as a human being and as someone who's been in tech, because it's not that difficult. This is not a hard problem to solve. And I sometimes think tech is making it hard. I don't know why. I really don't know why. But I have some theories. What would happen if, instead of Google opening up a huge new campus in Boulder, they went to Georgia and did it in Atlanta? Or Apple opened up a development office in Detroit for self-driving cars, since everybody says they've been working on it for the last year. Or Facebook leased 22,000 feet at the James Center in downtown Richmond, Virginia, not Oakland, sorry. I don't know if Richmond has 22,000 square feet to lease. If they do, let me know. But I said, what would happen? And I thought about that, and I wonder why they don't do that. And a lot of things come to mind. Why wouldn't you go to Atlanta, Georgia? Has great, school at Georgia Tech. Why wouldn't you go to Detroit? They're building cars, they're building apps. They're actually ahead of people in self-driving cars. Why don't you go to Richmond, Virginia? Capital One's there. What's in your wallet, right? It boggles my mind, and I wonder, do they just not value people of color? Do they not value these communities? And that's kind of like the only thing I can come up with. And so I want to challenge them. I want to challenge Facebook, and I want to challenge Google. I want to challenge anyone who's hiring more than 5 people. Look outside of your communities. People come to Silicon Valley and they build their companies here and they say they want diversity. Then I'm like, well, you're coming to the wrong place. It's not here. It's in this room. And if anything happens, if there's a tsunami, it's going to be really bad for the rest of tech. So this is what happens if you go to communities. You have contact. And this is a really interesting piece I found here. It was I took it from the Harvard Business Review. At the end of the day, somebody did a study in World War II that said you just put people together working towards a common goal, bias starts to go away. This is World War II. Segregation was still legal in all of the United States. And they figured this out 70, 75 years ago. So I'm like, if you want to move the dial, do what Slack did. Drake callback, right? What did Slack do? We opened an office in Toronto. Toronto is the most culturally diverse city in North America. 47%, I think, of the people in Toronto are from a different country. And people look at you and are like, well, I didn't know that. I'm like, well, go to Toronto and you will find out. I've been to Toronto. It is an extremely diverse city. So it really gives us a good starting off point. But you don't have to go to Toronto. You can go to Detroit. You can go to Richmond. You can go to Memphis, Cincinnati, Cleveland. You can go to these places and they will have diversity. And here's the funny thing that happens if you go to those places, you open up an office, is that you will hire people who are diverse because that's what's in the community. And those people will come back to your headquarters. They will come back to Facebook, they will come back to Google, they will come back to Apple. And they will hire people who look like them because that's their network. And then something else really funny happens. The people who are in these communities, in Richmond, in Detroit, they will end up serving as inspiration and as an example to people there. More kids will go to college for computer science. More kids will be engaged because they'll see role models in their communities. And then something else funny happens. The community starts to invest in itself because you have high-paying jobs, and it starts to rebuild itself. So instead of giving $1 million to a school, or instead of partnering with so-and-so, or teaching, or giving money to a coding school, which I think is great, and I think it helps build the pipeline, but the pipeline has never been the problem. We have a responsibility in tech to invest in our communities. We have a responsibility to reach out to people who do not have the advantage that we do. And when we don't do that, we'll never change the ratio. We'll never move the dial. So what happens is that you could go from this to this if you do that. I just love this picture because I just look at this and I'm like, and that's the state of our nation today. Anyway, that's what I have to say. I want to say thank you for having me. And they're about to send out the hook to grab me off stage. So if you guys have questions, you better do it now. Oh.
Hi. So what do you do, though, if your company does move to a diverse place, like, say, Toronto, and then only hires all white people? So, how do you get the company to buy into to hiring those within the community that are people of color or more women, et cetera?
If Facebook were to go to Detroit and hire nothing but white people, I think that would just speak for itself. It's like you almost can't do that. I guess they could do it, but they shouldn't do it. I think there's enough awareness in companies now that it's almost it's a no-op. It's just probably not going to happen. Will people do it? Well, of course, somebody will do it, and it will be in the news, and we'll all make fun of them, and then they will get some act right. But I do think that there's enough awareness where if you're saying, hey, we're moving to the city to be diverse, and then you don't hire any diversity, why did you move to that city in the first place?
Hi, I think I happen to be a remote worker, and I think remote work is a growing possibility for more people and is a big possibility as far as in diversity and inclusion. I'm curious what you think responsibility remote companies have as far as not having that same sense of place opportunity as a physical company.
Oh, that's a good question. I've never even thought about that from the standpoint. I think with with remote companies, you could definitely look to hire in those areas, right? So you could actually put the job postings for these particular areas. And I think that's a good way to go. Instead of saying, oh, I have a friend who knows how to do this in San Francisco or New York, I have a friend to do this in someplace else. So, that's kind of my approach. If I had to do it, I would be like, hey, let's go to the cities that have more diversity and see what we get. And then if you have the same type of hiring practices that a lot of people are doing now, that's not going to be a problem. I had one more slide. I'm going to leave that up. I'm hooked. All right. Thank you all. Have a great day. I'll be around answering questions, doing a dance.